Hello, I'm Lucy Brazier. I'm the CEO of March and Publishing, and we publish Executive Secretary magazine. On the 19th and 20th of June 2020, we broadcast our very first virtual conference, Executive Secretary Live Global. We had over 550 attendees from 27 countries who took part in 48 hours of continual personal development. As part of that programme, we broadcast a panel discussion. It was a panel discussion that was brought to me as an idea by John Shaw, the former EA to the CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. In it, we discussed racism within the workplace, and the feedback has been so extraordinary that we went back to the panel to ask them whether they would be happy for us to broadcast it as an admin chat so that it would become widely shareable and so that a much bigger audience could view it. I'm going to leave it to John Shaw to introduce it properly.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining me today. There are so many people that are afraid to discuss the topic of racism because it makes them feel uncomfortable. What I'll say to that is it's okay to be uncomfortable. What I'll ask of you is to please sit and listen to this roundtable discussion with an open mind and take the knowledge that you learned today and try to grow from it. Try to walk in these ladies' shoes to understand the pain that they have to feel every day that they walk into a building or in the world around us. Many of my white friends and colleagues have asked me what they should do and how they should approach this topic. My advice to them is do not ask our Black colleagues for an instruction manual on how to be generous and kind. It is our responsibility as white people to love, lift them up, and most importantly, listen to the struggles that they have to deal with and learn from them. Please allow me to introduce you to four beautiful, powerful women that I get to call not only my colleagues, but my friends. Miss Lafayette Wilder, Miss Barbara Oliver, Miss Ayanna Castro, and Miss Lizebeth Koloko. Thanks for taking the time to listen. And over to you, ladies. I think our first topic we should talk about code switching. Ayanna, do you want to kick that off?
Sure, I'll kick that off. The funny thing is, being in corporate America, so I've been in corporate America for quite some time, the code switching isn't just the way we speak, right? We've grown up, women, Black women, we've taught at a very early age that you have your regular voice and your office voice. So your office voice, you tend to raise your octave, you tend to speak a certain way. Yes, well, thank you. But when you're talking to each other, it's like, hey girl, how you doing? What's going on? How are you feeling? It's a different lexicon. It's a different relaxed feel. The problem that Black women have to deal with every single day is that we code switch throughout the day. We don't just code switch with people of different races. We code switch with different levels within the organization. We have to code switch with the way we dress. So where it might be a dress down casual Friday, I very well cannot come in there with ripped jeans and a t-shirt. I still have to look somewhat professional. So I may have a t-shirt on and some jeans, but I still have my accessories on, and my hair is done a certain way, and my face is still with makeup on. And it's not just how I present myself to others, it's how I instruct others to present themselves to others. So we kind of give each other the head like, don't go in there and embarrass me. But it's part of the code switching. We all want to make sure that we are presenting ourselves in a way that's not typically, not the stereotype, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's all about keeping that blackness in check.
Did you have something to say?
I think Elizabeth, you should say that. I think you should say that again. I don't think that people heard that.
No, I think it's about keeping that blackness in check when we're in the workplace.
Can you expand on that a bit, Elizabeth?
It's about, like, just to further until Anaya's point, it's also the way we dress, also our hairstyles, the way we do our hair. I'm taking an example for me. I was in this company for 16 years. I did weave. I also had colored my hair, I did weave, extensions, and at the end, my hair started falling out. But I had to keep that perfect image and to be taken seriously in the workplace. But now I'm you know, I at one point I said to myself, I need to stop and just be myself. So I'm rocking my braids now.
And very beautiful they look too.
Thank you.
I feel like we are always fighting against a stereotype. You know, that's like we go through our work life fighting against a stereotype of all the Black people you see on television and in the media. So whatever they're doing, we do the opposite, you know, even down to your word choice. You know, we talked about the code switching. It's even down to your basic verbiage you use during a conversation. You know, the relaxed conversation or words you use with somebody you're familiar with versus your professional words when you can't just say, you know, excuse terminology, that's ratchet. You know, never use that. That is not a professional word. That is, it's all, that's unfortunate. That is, you know, you have to choose your verbiage correctly, you know, and it's, like I said, we are always fighting against that image that the media puts out there about Black women and Black people.
I agree with you, Lacey. You know, it's funny. I worked in sports talk radio for a number of years, and I was often the only African American in my meetings. I was the only female in all of my meetings, and I had to keep up that persona. But when I would go in to do voiceovers, I was often told by the producer, "Can you sound a little more," and I would say ethnic. So I would have to switch on that Blackness. And once I left the recording studio, go back to my corporate voice. And people would often come into the studio and go, "Oh, I want to work with Barbara." And I'm like, "Oh, great. No, do you have more than one Barbara?" Because I didn't sound like that Black girl that they heard on air.
You don't look how you sound.
Struggle with that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you don't, your voice doesn't match how I imagined you to look. Somebody actually told me that.
Yes.
Wow. And I said, "Well, what exactly did my voice sound like?"
Also,
I didn't realize that voices had a face, but okay.
When I moved to the US, and you know, I didn't speak English very well, and I only spoke French, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know there was Black people in France. You really speak French?" And when I came back to France, and they were like, "Oh, I didn't know that Black people spoke English so well." So.
Yeah. You're so articulate.
Yeah.
You write so well.
So well spoken.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so well spoken.
Yeah.
So when you guys look back on those moments in your life, was there anybody that you ever felt was an ally for you, Lafayette?
To be honest with you, my first big ally didn't come along until I was probably in my 30s, you know, especially in the workplace. Definitely in my 30s. And it was another young Black woman, and we were both executive assistants, and just her strength. And, you know, she was one of the people who kind of like lifted you up, you know, very, very strong, and lifted you up and didn't take any crap. And depending upon your industry, there are very few people who can kind of get away with that, can get away with truly being themselves and that being welcomed and embraced, you know? And then I'm gonna give a shout out here, and I need this person to not get a big head when I say this, but my other second biggest ally has been John Shaw. I mean, he has pushed me and supported me in ways that, you see it swelling. I mean, it pushed me and supported me in ways that you think about, you hear about those friends who will like ride or die friends who will do whatever. And you think you have that. And you think you had that support until something happens and you realize that maybe that person didn't truly, you had different ideas of what that meant, to support somebody and truly lift them up and to be their ally. But John Shaw has been phenomenal. I mean, it's like he is always, have you thought about this? Have you tried this? And if anyone tries to come against me, he is the first person to be like, to be there to stand up by my side, or behind me, looking over my shoulder, giving someone the evil eye, if they say something wrong. So it's one of those things, but being an ally is very tricky, because it's like, not only do you carry, what you bring to the table, but you carry their reputation with you also. And you have to protect that reputation also. And I think that to get through anything in the business world, you need to develop allies. And I feel for Black women, and I've heard this before. It's like for Black women, though, it's a challenge because in order for I feel like our allies to be truly effective, we have to have allies who are a few steps ahead of us. Not on our same level is great, but we're both struggling together, that's great also. But it seems that Black women always have to get confirmation. And Ayanna said this, she's like, you have to have allies who are a couple steps ahead of you to be validated in the workplace. Where I feel like there are many other groups, that's not even a question. Validation is not even a question. It's they don't get second guessed like Black women do. And especially when you're in a support role. It's something about being in a support role that your opinion or your work has to be validated by someone else.
It's almost like you're not trusted to be the subject matter expert. Regardless of how much, it doesn't matter how many degrees, certifications, education, your experience, your work experience. It's almost as if we couldn't possibly be smart enough to have come up with that solution.
Right.
You must have heard that from someplace else. No, actually, when you heard it in the meeting just a minute ago, it's because they had a pre-meeting with me 15 minutes ago. So it is the constant battle of people stealing your ideas and presenting it and not giving you credit. That's the other part. My biggest issue with allies is that I've never had an ally other than someone who they actually had to see my work. Like they saw my work and saw it for what it was, and they spoke up and said, she really is performing at this level. Mm-hmm. I didn't reach out to find a mentor, and I know that might be on me, like I probably should have at some point, but I was in a support role for a very long time. My first job out of college, I was a social worker. So I went from being a social worker to an office manager to being an executive assistant because I thought it was easy. And, along the way, my role has evolved into this project management, employee engagement type piece. But all of the information, the knowledge, with all that stuff has been self-taught, self-gained, because I reached out to people not within my company, but outside of my company to help and assist. I can say this, and this is, nothing to swell heads, but Lucy Brazier is a huge proponent of pushing people forward and out of their comfort zone. I can tell you, she's asked me to do some things, and I'm like, what? You want me?
I'm so with you on that.
You want me to do what? Oh my God. Lucy will push you clean out, smooth out your comfort level. And you're just sitting there like, well, if Lucy believes it, well, then I'm going to believe it too, because she needs something. And that has been a huge push and encouragement for me over the last couple of years. But Lucy doesn't even work in the industry I'm in. You know what I mean? But it's the outside. Sometimes you have to find allies from the outside of your workplace to help propel you in different places.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this question then. I mean, since you say talking about allies, do you feel like that's your work, that in order for you to gain an ally within your organization, they've had to see you do the work, the whole process? I think a lot of people when you go into a meeting, they have an idea or they come up with something, and just on that word, they're believed in the sense of, maybe for Black women, that it's like, or Black people, someone has had to see the whole process to know that you've done it from start to finish, and there was no one helping you in between, or even if there was, you were still the person spearheading that for it still to be validated, even for that ally.
Yes, absolutely. They needed to see it from point A to point B, and part of it is, like you say, you carry your reputation and theirs as well. So when they're speaking my name in rooms that I'm not in, they need to be able to stand, flat-footed and be like, and give solid examples. Like, no, she actually worked on this. She actually managed this. She actually manages, multiple cross-functional teams across the organization. They need to be able to speak to that. So I think a lot of times allies do need to see that the proof is in the pudding, and that you're actually doing what it is that you say that you can do. Because people talk a good game, but people need to see it.
Yeah.
Lizebeth, or I just called you Lizebeth. Sorry, Lizebeth. From your perspective in the international community, talk to us about allies in Paris.
I think it's important to have allies, and I know that I'm going to talk about in France. In the company I was in, my division, I was the only Black woman, so I couldn't have a Black ally. I had a white male ally. He was able to vouch for my character. He was able to help me receive that promotion, help me receive that raise. So I think that it's harder, I think, in Europe, in France in particular, when you're a Black woman in the workplace, because you really have to have these allies to help you, because you can be the best that you can be. You can go that extra mile, but sometimes it's not enough. And having that ally push you upward, help you gain the confidence, help you to gain to acquire the raise, to be able to change job. It's so important.
Barbara, what are your thoughts?
Can I ask a quick question though from Lizebeth, since she is speaking from an international perspective? Do you feel like their impression or their idea of you as a Black woman is more Western centered as opposed to Eastern centered? Are there ideas about you as a Black woman based on American values and American ideals versus European ideas? Because I think for Americans, let me just say from my perspective, I feel like you always hear about you're treated better Blacks are treated better in Europe than they are in America. You have less, and maybe as an American we get that, because we're not from there. But do you feel like their idea of Black women in Europe is based upon Western interpretations?
No, I would say that the ideas of Black women is more based on the African woman from Africa. For them, it's like African women, they don't know, they're not educated. They only, sometimes I even heard that many times, they only marry white men for money. I heard that several times. So it's not, I would definitely say for them, it's more about the African idea of the African woman that they have, and not from based. But in my situation, it was different because I was born in Paris and I was raised in Fremont, California. My dad is American, so I had the American mindset. So when I came back to France, to me, they were like, oh, first you speak English very well. I was, in my company, I was one of the few ones that was fluent in English. So that gave me a little bit more than other people. And I had more of an American mindset. So they were coming at me like, oh, you're different, like the African woman that we meet all the time.
I don't even know what to say to that.
It's like, wow. But it's still unfortunate. You still have, as a an African or a Black woman or African or whatever, it's like you still have to be more.
More, yeah. You have to go
Like
the extra mile.
You know, and people, and it's interesting. People was like, "Well, I don't feel that," but it's still you have to be more. You know, you have to be. I mean, you speak French, you speak English.
Yes,
Very,
I'm learning the German and Mandarin Chinese. So, but I have to always have in my entire work career. You know, I can be doing the same job as another admin professional, but I will get paid less. I would not be considered. I will have to always go that extra mile. And then
you're still not guaranteed. Even when you go the extra mile, you're still not guaranteed.
Exactly. You're still not guaranteed.
So let's rewind a minute, guys, or ladies, I'm sorry, you guys, and revisit, Lafayette, where you mentioned more. Can we talk about the level of discrimination that happens with Black men and Black women?
You want to take that one first? You want me to start?
I'll take a breath. Let's all take a breath, okay?
Okay, so I will say that in a professional setting, Black men, women are held to a higher standard, and the expectation is that we must have more. So it's not enough to have a bachelor's. You need to have a bachelor's and a master's. You need to have a bachelor's and or additional professional certifications. You can't just have on a dress. It needs to be a dress that is appropriate, that doesn't show your curves that were given to you by God and nature. You can wear heels, but they shouldn't look whorish. You can wear a suit, but you better make sure that the suit is custom made, because ill-fitting suits on Black men make them look like little boys. You have to make sure that you use the proper, we talk about the code switching. It is the expectation that we're going to continue to give you task after task after task, because you're built for it. You can take more, you can withstand more. And that's a bunch of mess. I had a conversation with an HR professional not too long ago, and I said, you know, I'm ready to take off the Black woman cape. I am not here to save the world. I'm not here to save this whole, I can't do it. This strong Black woman, strong Black man, it's just ridiculous. And we're held to a higher standard. We are definitely written up more for our passion. So whereas it's perfectly okay for someone not of color to hoop and holler and scream and cuss about the office, if I have a passionate moment, or God forbid, one of my Black male coworkers should have a moment where they just, you know, they're upset. It wasn't professional correct. But if a white woman feels that their outburst made them uncomfortable, now this Black man is a threat. Doesn't matter if this man has been with the company for X amount of years and has performed above and beyond his peers. In that moment, she felt threatened, and therefore this man's job is now on the line. It's that type of unexpected level of expectation that is just, it's just unrealistic.
Barbara, we touched on this not too long ago in a phone call, and we were talking about Mike and about the level of discrimination you have seen with Black men. Can we talk about that a little more?
Absolutely. You know, I shared with John, my husband is in law enforcement, and every day he goes out and he works to protect children against sex traffickers. But he's also working the protests each day. And, you know, he came home, he said, you know, today was the first day I've felt threatened. And, you know, it was by someone who racially profiled him. And just to hear that fear coming from him, I was like, you know, this is real. That never ever would have happened to probably an African-American woman. You know, I feel like for us, we're pulled in two different directions. We're fighting, you know, with our Black men for racial equality, at the same time fighting with women of other nationalities to fight inferiority, you know, to make America a better place, when I mean, America is not really working for us, working to make a better place for us. So I don't know, I look at him and everything that he goes through, along with my husband. We've been married for 2 years. I gained 3 handsome bonus sons, and now I worry about them when they go out. I worry if they're going to come home the next day, and just all the things that come along with being a Black male. And as a Black female, I don't think I ever had to worry about that.
Wow. So how do you feel about how corporate America has responded to this? What are your thoughts?
I think it's great that corporate America has been committed to giving millions of dollars to these foundations that are supporting these Black causes. I think it's great, but we have to do more than that. How do we get people really committed to the cause? You have to be committed, and you can't be committed for a week or 3 months. You have to, it's convenient to look like you're committed, right? But change only comes when you're committed. So how do we get those conversations started? And the conversations have to be really, really uncomfortable between you and your white counterparts. Ask those questions that you've been afraid to ask. Everybody's not going to drink the Kool-Aid, right? But we have to start somewhere, and maybe start identifying minority women and get them in leadership roles, because until we have more minority women in leadership roles, things aren't going to change for other Black women.
Yeah.
Lizebeth?
I'm happy that I recently, I got a new role, and I'm in a new company now for a few months. And I was so surprised about the way they responded to what's happening. This morning, we received an email from our CEO and from the HR, and they were giving us tips. Like, they even give us links to articles that we can read on the subject. There was a great article on the Time on check in on your Black employees now. They also were talking about ways that we can donate. The company is also going to donate. And we have an internal group for Black women, Black men, Black employees. And they were encouraging other employees of other races to also join the group. So there are some companies that are doing some really great stuff out there. And I'm proud to be part of a company that acknowledged the issue and is finding new ways of, trying to help the employees and their well-being and giving back and making that, it's a small step, but it's a step to a better world. So, yeah.
Can I say something? Because I think it's really interesting. I would wonder if you would agree with me, but I feel like there aren't the same opportunities for you as there are maybe for others, unless, as you say, you work even harder for it. And particularly in America, I've been very aware when I've been to the really, really big conferences that the lower levels of the assistant have far more Black people going to those sessions than there are the higher levels. So for me personally, I'm really interested in how we change that, how we get corporate America looking at making sure that the opportunities are there so that we're far more equal and you are able to take your seat at the table.
So I'm going to weigh in on this. This is where I will say it is our responsibility as white people to help lift our Black colleagues up and support them and be that fighting force for them. Lacey, your thoughts?
First, let me say, I think it's interesting how I thought Turner was doing a great job before all this started and everything. But it's interesting how our merger with AT&T, I feel like, has opened up so many more doors for us as employees. Different people have been brought into our lives, and through our reorganization, we have some really high-profile women who are stepping up on behalf of minority women. And it's exciting to see. I also feel like I'm just going to be rambling all over the place because you guys said so much great stuff. And I also want to say, we talk about those conversations within our organization. Companies doing what they're going to do and donating money is great, you know, but a lot of this stuff has to start like on a grassroots level within your organization, within your teams, within your departments, within your you share a role with someone. You know, I remember one time when it was years ago, and we all sat on this row, these like 6 of us on this row. And it was a diverse row, white women, black men, and it was just a row in the building. And we were like a mini posse, you know, it was just like, this is the row you want to be on. We supported each other. We gave each other nicknames. We you know, spoke about each other's children, you know, got together outside of work. And I think it's those moments that are going to help propel us, because, you know, it can't just stay. We wanted to go outside of the office. We wanted to go into life, you know, on the highways, at the grocery stores, at the movie theaters. When you see people, you wanted to extend into every part of your everyday life, not just in the office, because that's what it's going to have to take. But I think that it's a great start. I think we're doing some great things. And we just have to keep having the conversations. And I think as African or Black people, and that's another conversation, but I think as Black people, I feel like we have to give some slack, because in order to have these tough conversations, everybody's not going to know the right words to use to ask certain questions. Everyone's not going to have the appropriate verbiage. Like we talk about, we have to have the appropriate verbiage. And if you want people to come to you, they have to come to you where they are, you know, and it's our job to meet them there and not berate them when they use a word that they don't know is offensive, or they don't know, they just heard, so they don't really know the meaning of the word. It's our job to have a conversation and educate them and bring them in and not push them away and not flare up and not like, I can't believe she said that to me, or she used those particular words. You have to move past that. And in order to bring people in and teach them and show them and inform them, you know, that may not be appropriate verbiage, but let's have a conversation about it. I think that's another big thing.
I think a lot of white women, sorry, Ayanna, Barbara, I am going to give you a second. I think a lot of white women white people would really appreciate that. I mean, especially quite recently, I feel like I'm going to have conversations and I get a couple of words in and I think, what's the appropriate term to use there? Am I going to be offensive if I use that word? And so I tie myself up in knots with having the conversation, because I feel like I might end up being really patronizing or really offensive by using the wrong terminology, and therefore the conversation doesn't flow, you know?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I will say that a lot of it is the acknowledgement of it, right? So, well, we do have to do the work. The work starts with acknowledging it. Acknowledge that there is some racial tension in your office. Acknowledge that there has been some systematic racist practices in place in the workplace. Take a look at why there are certain percentages of Black people in lower paying positions, why there's only a certain percentage of Black people in middle management, in senior management, and acknowledge it. Because until we actually say, you know what, there is actually a problem, we'll continue to have these surface level conversations instead of the deeper conversations that are needed in order to make the change. Some of the corporations that I've seen that have made statements and donations, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, that's great. I would like to see a picture of what your board of directors looks like. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see what your executive staff looks like. What is the makeup of your executive staff in comparison to white male, men of color, women of color? Like what is the makeup of that? Because that's where the real change actually happens. So until they recognize the value that is brought in by having a diverse leadership team, it won't trickle down. And the same behaviors continue to perpetuate. There's, outliers out there willing to have these conversations, but the acknowledgement has to be made. Like, you know what? We are not perfect. We are not whole and we're broken, and we need to pull together to get this conversation. And it's not going to be pretty. You know,
Yeah.
somebody might get mad and flip a chair. You know, somebody might start crying and boo-hooing. It's not going to be pretty, but it's necessary.
Right.
It's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
There is definitely an eruption of consciousness happening.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was so surprised. I've been like sitting up late at night watching YouTube. Don't ask me why, but I have come across and like on my Insta, just been watching things, and I have been moved by some of the people who have recorded videos saying, white people saying and professing that and acknowledging the fact that they have thought this way. And I was reading an article and this guy was like, I'm a racist. He's like, even when I don't intend to be a racist, I am a racist because I benefit. I go along with these things. But that's the first step, you know, and being open. You know, it's one thing to admit, yeah, I'm a racist, but are you okay with being a racist? If you're okay with it, you know, it's like, you know, it's, well, nothing I can do, you know, it's like,
well,
right. But wanting to be informed, wanting to be, and not even a better human being, because I hate to use those kind of terminologies, like, you know, if when you've been brought up this way, it's all you know, kind of thing. But like you said, acknowledging it, but just wanting more, you know, that knowledge and that diversity in your life, you know?
Yeah, as somebody who grew up in New York, I thrive off of diversity. Like, that is my zhuzh. I grew up in an apartment next to a Russian scientist, you know, who moved from Russia. He had to escape Russia. And, you know, I remember his kids and my brother and I playing in the hallway, and down the hallway was a Puerto Rican family, and up 2 doors from that was an Italian family. So I thrive on diversity because I know the different threads of thought that can come from that are not my own. Like, it's fine. You can pat yourself on, oh, I'm really smart. I'm really, okay, you're smart, but you're not that smart, because you realize what you don't know when you talk to somebody who doesn't have the same background as you. And then you grow from that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, ladies, we are running out of time. And so we're going to have a quick fire round. What's next?
Do we get prizes?
That can be discussed after.
What I would really like, if we're doing a quick fire round here, is for each of you to give me a word of advice to give maybe younger Black workers in the administrative profession advice as to how they're going to get ahead. And then after that, I would love it if each of you would give a word of advice for a workplace as to how they can start to balance this slightly. So can I come to Lafayette first?
Okay. I would say for the young person, young EA professional, don't settle.
Yeah.
You know, don't settle, and don't be a slave to the dollar. I think a lot of times we get in these jobs and it's like the most money you've ever made, and it's paying your bills, and it's allowing you a certain level of a social life and a freedom and that kind of thing. But when you become a slave to the dollar, you sacrifice yourself and you compromise yourself in ways that you probably normally would because of the money. You stay in situations longer than you possibly should because of the money. Jobs you possibly should because of the money. So don't settle and don't become a slave to the dollar. I think it's great for young people. Definitely. I would also say to the young folks out there, the young EAs, you know, keep interviewing. Never stop interviewing. I mean, it helps you know your worth, not just in your industry, but throughout all, just out there in the marketplace to begin with. It helps you know your industry, because in this particular industry, they may see this as your value, and you learn these things. In a different industry, you may have a higher value. But even if you don't plan on leaving that particular job, you can go back and knowing that I'm worth more than what you're offering me. Yeah. And I have options, you know? So I think that's great I think those are 3 great tips. You said 1, I said 3, sorry, for young people. And the second thing was for, what was the second thing? I'm sorry.
The second thing was a piece of advice for workplaces that wanted to be more diversity aware and friendly.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this at work, you know, when we get back. I was like, I would love to, I remember in school when I was in 6th grade, we had, you know, heritage weeks and heritage months. And I know we have Black History Month, but I mean, just opportunities to learn about different cultures in the workplace. You know, I think that would be amazing. Just to, you know, Chinese New Year, let's have something on campus with you know, with our Asian, coworkers, and us learn about, you know, Hong Kong, learn about China, learn about different aspects of Asian culture or our Asian coworkers. I think those would be great, you know, opportunities or missed opportunities that we aren't taking advantage of. You know, I'm tired of learning about Excel spreadsheets. I want to learn about, you know, other people within my organization. I want to learn more about them. So maybe some things like that I think would be great. And if anything else, there has to be some kind of, I feel like I want people, your title does not define you. You know, and just because we're executive assistants, you know, I feel like we're the low people on the totem pole a lot of times. In a lot of organizations, we're expendable, we're invisible, and us being Black women is like a double whammy or triple whammy. That titles should not define you in your workplace. You know, we have this hierarchical standard, but we're still people.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That's all I got.
Barbara, do you want to go next?
Sure. For the young EAs, I would say have a voice. Don't be afraid of being viewed as intimidating, because often, you know, the smarter we are, the more we have to say, the more intimidating we appear. So have a voice, find your voice, speak out. For corporate America, I would say get your people more engaged, get them to read and learn about racism, listen to what your coworkers have to say and how they're feeling, connect with them. And for our leaders, use your power and your platform and take action.
Wonderful. Lizebeth?
I would say know your worth. I think it's really important. For a very long time, I was in a situation where I was a victim of racism, and I didn't know my worth. So I accepted a lot of things that I shouldn't have accepted. So I would definitely say know your worth and learn how to say no. And what happened before I got this new job, I was offered another position where I was downgraded, and for the first time in 16 years, I said, you know what? No, I know my worth, and I know I'm worth more, and I will find a company where I will be able to put all the knowledge that I've acquired in the last 16 years for a better cause.
And you did.
Yes, and what I would say for corporate America is to pave the way for others, to include more diversity in the workplace. So those would be my two.
Thank you, Lizebeth. And Ayanna, last but by no means least.
So my advice to the younger admin professionals would to be never, ever, ever stop learning and push yourself beyond those situations that get out of your comfort zone. And we get comfortable with being, I'm just going to go ahead and I'll schedule this meeting, I'll do this PowerPoint, but we don't push ourselves to learn more. So find the person who's going to give you a stretch goal. Give yourself at least 3 stretch goals a year, goals that you're going to sit there and be terrified to do, but go ahead and set them for yourself anyway. For corporate America, I would say acknowledge what's going on and learn to speak from a voice of empathy and not necessarily sympathy. Empathy goes a long way because empathy says, I see you. I see you for who you are. Sympathy is like, oh, I feel how you, Empathy means I see what's going on. And when you speak from that level, when leaders speak from a level of empathy, it is translated into greater employee engagement. It's translated into a better corporate environment. And when employees feel that they're valued and that their leaders are empathetic to how they feel, they then become these great ambassadors. You get free exposure and free marketing from all of these employees that are saying, you know, my company hit the nail on the head. They got this right. So I would encourage companies to ensure that they're on the right side of history, because if nothing else, this particular situation has shown that it will not go back to status quo and it will not go back to normal. And it has been a shift in mindsets for everybody.
This has just been wonderful and so informative. Thank you, ladies, for taking the time to come and join us. Thank you, John, for pulling everybody together and for insisting we had this conversation, because I just think it's been so eye-opening and our viewers are going to find it really, really useful. Thanks, everybody. Great job.
Thank you.
You.